Yesterday's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news of the day through the papers of yesterday. I thought we'd stay seasonal this week and not so much a headline as something we do at this time of the year. Hop Tu Naa. Halloween elsewhere in the world, but Hop Tu Naa on the Isle of Man. Not that you'd know it from the number of pumpkins outside some of the big supermarkets, but I digress. It's been a long time tradition all my life and way beyond that, so I thought we'd have a look in the papers and see how it's featured. Perhaps not quite as much as I thought, for as long as I thought, as far as I could see, in any case. Nonetheless, we can go back well over 120 years to 1897 in the Isle of Man. Examiner, Saturday, January the 9th. And a wonderful article on a concert which was held of Manx music, an overflow house, we are told. And Hop Tu Naa featured here, but it was just an interesting piece in any case. The writer says the concert of Manx music promoted by His Honour Deemster Gill and held at the Grand Theatre Douglas on Thursday evening was an unqualified success. All the floor space of the building was fully occupied and hundreds had to be refused admission. Oh, those were the days. The large audience was very appreciative and His Honour the Deemster, Mr. W.H. Gill and Dr. Clegg are to be congratulated on the success which has attended their admirable efforts to rescue and keep alive Manx music. Bearing in mind this is 1897, some choice specimens of which were heard for the first time by most of those present on Thursday night. The following was the programme, and it details the entire programme. Don't know if you get away with that these days in the papers. Some well-known songs there, though. A chorus singing Ramsey Town, words by E. Crabbe. The Wreck of the Herring Fleet. I think this is one of its first outings. Words by A.P. Graves. The Sheep in the Snow by Mr. W.H. Gill, of course. Iliam Doan and Hunt the Wren was given an outing for this as well. As indeed was a Manx wedding, and the White Boys were there. And then, of course, further down the programme we hear the Hollantide song Hop Tu Naa, Messrs. G.E. Kelly and S. Christian. Quite an evening by the sound of it, and absolutely packed to the rafters, as you heard. And interesting, the Deemster was involved in organising it. I do rather like that. I don't think it would happen quite the same these days. Further on, the writer goes on to generally pay great praise to those present, but qualified at times. The choruses were the best features of the evening's entertainment, so that's one in the eye for the soloists. They were accompanied by Mr. Harry Wood's orchestra, the services of which excellent body of musicians can hardly be overestimated. The chorus consisted of some of the ladies and gentlemen all dressed in costumes representing Manx life and character in the old time. Presumably the 18th century then, or maybe early 19th century. The ladies wore shirt and various coloured plaid skirts and bodices and check and white aprons, low shoes. Some wore bonnets with white frilled caps, others hoods of the orthodox shape. And the effect of the whole, backed by some capital and appropriate local scenery and acting, was really fine and delighted the audience beyond measure. Ramsey Town and Deemster Gill's The King of the Sea were the best of the choruses. Well, they're still popular now. The refrain of the last named ran, "Oh, the herring boys, the herring, oh, the herring boys for me, red or kippered, fresh or pickled, oh, the herring is king of the sea." Still popular now, I sing it with the shanties. The other pieces in character, Hunt the Wren, the White Boys, and, of course, Hop Tu Naa, which were creditably performed, the acting being capital. So the singing wasn't up to too much, but the acting was first class, it seems. And then again, some of the further comments. Mr. A.M. Proctor was very happy in his songs. Mr. Brocklebank and Mr. Wood's songs were well given. Miss Jull's best attempt was The Sheep Under the Snow. Wonder what her worst attempt was. Damning with faint praise there, I think. And Miss Turner's songs were given very pleasingly, but the music allocated to her was of a very plaintive character. Mrs. Corlett was in capital voice in her song, and Mr. W. Gill's hymn, The Harvest of the Sea, was nicely rendered. And then again, thinking back to when it was, and I know we're digressing slightly from Hop Tu Naa, but I do like the fact that this was well over 120 years ago, and Manx music was being questioned then. Taken altogether, the writer says, the concert was one in which all who took part may take to themselves much credit, and we are glad to see so much interest evinced, there's a good word, in what was in great danger of being entirely lost. Manx music being entirely lost in 1897, or so it might have been thought. There were some ladies and gentlemen engaged on the stage, and among that number, only about 40 can really be considered natives of the Isle of Man. We do not wish to infer that the concert suffered on that account, but it seems a pity that more Manx musical people, there is no lack of them, were not engaged in the affair. Fascinating article that, as I say, from the Isle of Man Examiner of January 1897. Back to more matters Hop Tu Naa and a Hop Tu Naa festival mentioned in the Peel City Guardian of Sunday, November the 4th, 1933. A very large and appreciative company of the Barrow Manx Society was present in the Plaza Ballroom, the occasion being the Hop Tu Naa festival. Seems a little bit late, actually, doesn't it? Some 150 persons sat down to an excellent tea. The hall was tastefully decorated with flags and streamers kindly loaned, well, they were going back, by the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. They wanted the streamers back, and it presented an animated appearance. A concert followed. The bright spot providing the programme was a very high order, the various items being applauded by large audiences. And they sang Alan Vannon and the Manx National Anthem, among other numbers. We skip to 1947, the Isle of Man Examiner, Friday, January the 24th, and under the letterbox page, there's a brief piece just entitled Hop Tu Naa, and it's by David C. Corlett in reply to Mr. Elwell's query as to the date of Hop Tu Naa. You wouldn't think you wouldn't know in 1947, would you? I can inform him we have always observed it on the last day in October. This date I've confirmed with friends from the mainland. The gentleman wasn't Manx, there we are. Although the practice of observing it does not appear to have been general in the island. Duck Apple Night was also a popular term used for the occasion, and the game had a prominent place in the celebrations. Like so many of the customs of happier days, Hop Tu Naa seems to be passing away completely. Why not revive it? And that was 1947. Goodness. It was going strong, certainly, when I was a nipper in the 1960s. Mr. Corlett goes on, Goodbye, goodbye, old Hop Tu Naa. Like many grand customs, you've died away. Only memories are left to recall the date. Let's bring it back. It's never too late. Well, was there a revival of Hop Tu Naa in the late 40s and early 50s? We shall have to ask Culture Vannon, I think, on that one. Because as I say, I was born in the early 60s, and certainly Hop Tu Naa and going out with your lantern was alive and well, in central Douglas at least. So I assume in the country as well, in the mid-60s onwards. We turn to the Mona's Herald, Tuesday, October the 28th, 1952. Hop Tu Naa night, celebration, you'll have to forgive my terrible Manx pronunciation, by Banglan Manananak Nikohaglam Celtic. I'll be getting shot by Phil Gorn. Halloween is to be celebrated in the traditional style with a demonstration of the Hop Tu Naa dance by the, I've got to say it again, Banglan Manananak Nikohaglam Celtic. It's not good, is it? At the Scouts Hall in Domain Road next Saturday night. The Halloween opens the winter programme, and the chairman, Mr. David Crane, MACP, is to preside over the occasion following his election to the international presidency of the Celtic Congress. In the Isle of Man Daily Times of Wednesday, October the 30th, 1958, we hear of the Halloween song. Now, this was featured, I think, on the Manx programmes earlier this week with Hop Tu Naa being around. And I think I heard Bobby Bob Carswell talking about the words of the Hop Tu Naa songs, which varied depending on where you were on the Isle of Man, and I think when you were on the Isle of Man. I know the version I sang, but there are lots of different versions. And here in the paper in 1958 it says, here are the words of part of the Hop Tu Naa song. Actually, there are many more verses, but I think that these will be more than enough for you to memorise. Memorise them. That's the spirit. And it starts off as I know. Hop tu naa, Ginny the witch went over the house to catch the sticks to lather the mouse, hop tu naa, tra-la-lay. I didn't have the tra-la-lay in. My father's gone away. It was my mother when I was singing it. And he won't be back until the morning. And then there's the versions we never sang, but I have heard, and I heard Bobby Bob singing them quite recently, or I think it might have been Chloe Woolley. Hop tu naa, put in the pot, hop tu naa, a skelby throt, hop tu naa, I ran to the well, hop tu naa, I met an old cat, hop tu naa, the cat began to spit, hop tu naa. And then it goes on, I began to run, hop tu naa, I ran to Scotland, hop tu naa, I met an old woman, hop tu naa, she was baking bonnigs, hop tu naa, I asked her for a bit, she gave me a bit as big as me toe. And then the more common, she dipped it in milk, she wrapped it in silk. If you're going to give us anything, give us soon, for we're away by the light of the moon. We never had that either, but I've seen those words as well. Running to Scotland. Why would you run to Scotland? Dipping it in milk and wrapping it in silk. I've seen those words before, but it's fascinating how they vary over the years. If we turn to the Daily Times of Wednesday, October the 29th, 1958, it's listed in the kiddie section, I think this is, the Halloween song. And the writer says, I've found there aren't very many girls and boys who know the correct words to Hop Tu naa. I think that's because there are lots of different words and none are necessarily right or wrong. It just depends on where you were on the Isle of Man. And as I say, perhaps when you were on the Isle of Man. 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, they all change a little bit, don't they? So I thought, the writer goes on, I'd dig them out and reproduce them for you. When your mums and dads have finished reading the paper, now this man's a soft touch, perhaps they will let you cut the words out so that you'll be able to take them with you when you go out with your lanterns on Friday night. None of this memorising malarkey, far too much like hard work. Cut them out of the paper and paste them onto your turnip. By the way, there are probably many more verses which are sung in various parts of the island. Yes, he's quite right there, you see. But I think this will be enough to be going on with. And then again he has Hop Tu naa with Ginny the witch went over the house. It's still my father's gone away. It was definitely my mother's gone away when I was singing it in the 60s. And he won't be back until the morning. And then again the lines of scalding your throt, the spitting cats, running to Scotland, baking bonnigs. See, we didn't have any of that. And dipping the bit of bonnig as big as your toe in milk and wrapping it in silk. Why? One wonders. And of course, the same closing line, which, as I say, we never sang. If you're going to give us anything, give it us soon, for we're away by the light of the moon. And finally, 1959, in the Isle of Man Examiner, Mr. W.E. Quayle addresses the Birmingham Manx this time. Members and friends of the society spent a particularly happy evening at the annual dinner held at the Martineau Teachers Club in Birmingham on Saturday night. This being Hop Tu naa, everyone received one of the traditional gingerbread horses, which had been baked in the Isle of Man and brought over by visiting friends. Traditional gingerbread horses for Hop Tu naa. 1959. Now, I do seem to recall eating gingerbread horses in the 1960s, but were they associated with Hop Tu naa? I'd love to know. If you've got any thoughts on it, you can drop me a line, of course. Howard Kane at manxradio.com, and that's Kane with an E. Howard Kane at manxradio.com. I'll leave you with a joke this week. It's going back to the Daily Times of 1958. Joke Corner, sent in by Ken Barnes. Well done, Ken. John, why is a man about to hit somebody like a clock with the hands at 12:59? Jim, I've no idea. John, because he's about to strike one. I'll leave that one with you. Or perhaps, if you prefer, Dinah paying a bill. Well, I'm all square now. Waiter, yes sir, and I hope you will be round again soon. Until next week, cheerio. You're gonna be yesterday's news.